Hello, everyone, and welcome to one of our Hacking HR November conversations. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your co host for the next hour. We have Jessa backstage taking good care of us, and we have an amazing lineup of speakers for today, all eager to come and share their insights and their energy around the topic of understanding and adapting to workforce demands. While Jessa is bringing them up on stage, I will just say again, welcome and good whatever moment of this beautiful day you're enjoying on your time zones. I do encourage you to use the comments generously and consider the chat your conversation space just as much as it is ours here on the screen. If there's one thing that we enjoy is just to see your own stories, your own takes on whatever it is that we are discussing. And this is an amazing way to support the community and to help us learn from each other. Now, as we only have a very short hour and Hacking HR hours tend to feel shorter than regular hours, what I will do, I will just start the eMic on its clockwise journey across the screen, and I will ask you to first shortly introduce yourselves, and also do share with us what is the lens through which you enrich our conversations here today. So, Dustin, welcome. It's very good to have you with us today.
Hi, thanks, Manola, and welcome everyone. Um, I've been in human resources for about 18 years. I've worked across a variety of industry from heavy duty manufacturing and healthcare and software and consulting. And the lens, I guess, that I bring my viewpoint through is a very business centric, financials focused, and kind of analytics first view of HR. So as I previewed some of the questions, everything that I put together tends to be focused on customer and organizational outcomes, backed up and driven by cutting edge data.
Thank you, Dustin. I see that the first comment made it through. So hello, right back to Ottawa in Canada. And at least we now know that we are up and running. We're not stuck in some LinkedIn backstage loop somewhere. And I will try to upload English for the day I'm recovering from a flu. So not only I sound like Donald Duck, but I feel that every now and again I run out of English, but I will do my very best. Stephanie, good to see you.
It's so great to see you, Manola. I hope you're feeling better soon. So my name's Stephanie Lemick. I am a former HR executive and now am the founder of an organization called the Wounded Workforce. And we're dedicated to building trauma-informed workplaces and improving workplace mental health. And the lens I bring to this conversation is really a long time in house as an HR professional and understanding, some of the challenges HR professionals face, how important it is, like Dustin said, to be business focused, to be data driven, but then also to focus on our changing expectations as a workforce, especially as it relates to our mental health and well being. So, super grateful to be here with you all.
Wonderful. Thank you. Alex, good to see you on this panel today.
Morning. Kia ora, everyone. My name's Alex Howson. I'm down here in New Zealand, so it's a little bit in the middle of the nightish here. Look, I'm really looking forward to the conversation this morning, and particularly with regards to the marry up between the business expectations and what workforces globally are looking for, and making sure that we do have a really cool conversation about how those two things align, because quite often we don't get them aligned, and that can be a really expensive outcome, both financially and also from a mental health perspective. So I think this is going to be a really cool conversation. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Shari, good to see you. Welcome.
Great to see you, and you're looking cozy, hopefully on your way to feeling better, Manola. So nice to meet everyone. I am a consultant at Mercer in the transformation practice focused on HR organization and workforce transformation. I've been both a consultant and in-house as a head of HR and also as a head of culture and engagement. So the needs of the workforce have been near and dear to me and to my clients. So I bring two perspectives. One is I work with um, HR leaders and leaders across the C suite to help them go from sitting on a mountain of data that they're not using to ultimately thinking about how to look at and deploy and derive insights from that data. And I also bring to this conversation the mountain of great research that Mercer does on what employees want. We actually have a survey called Inside Employees' Minds that I imagine I will be either citing or thinking about that we do annually because this has become such an important topic to leaders. Excited to have a conversation with all of you today.
Thank you. And making our panel complete, Wayne, good to see you. It's been a while.
Yes, thank you. And Sherry, I'd like to tap into your learning what's inside people's minds. It's something I've never quite figured out. Sometimes I think it's empty, but other times I'm not sure what's in there. So we'll talk afterwards. But anyway, Wayne Tarkin, glad to be here, always supportive of Hacking HR. I've been an HR practitioner for about 30 years. Inside companies for about 20 of those, the last 10 outside. Worked with large and small companies. Took a slight career diversion. About 10 years ago, became a Scrum Master developing software for IBM and Comcast. And I realized that this agile stuff that they use enterprise software can be adapted to work for non-IT people. So I've taken the essence of what they do in Agile IT and make it for the Agile business person. We've been on a mission to do that for about 6 years. I teach a course at the University of Pennsylvania on developing and coaching the Agile leader in the organization. This year, we're focusing on AI initiatives. So my lens is as a teacher of developing the next generation, an external consultant who's going to work with large companies and know what people at the top level think about and what their challenges are. And I also expect to learn a lot from the panelists. So glad to be here.
Thank you very, very much, all of you, for taking the time and the energy to be here. And thank you, everybody in the audience, for taking the time and the curiosity to be with us. Before we dive very, very deep into the technicalities and intricacies of workforce expectations and agility and data, I would really love to have a few minutes just to look at what are the biggest shifts you have witnessed when it comes to workforce demands over the past period? And also, are there any more subtle trends that you want to call out just to outline the conversation of today? And by now, you know, always the first question, I go diagonally. I have no idea why. But Alex, I would ask you to be our pioneer today. And then everybody, the unmuting competition will be officially open and you just build your own conversation.
No problem at all. I was waiting for that one. Look, I think from, and down here in New Zealand, just to give you a bit of perspective, we're normally, 12 to 18 months trailing behind sort of Europe and the US in looking at workforce trends. Obviously, because we're isolated, we have a particular challenge with regards to talent and attraction and retention. Retention specifically because our people leave school, go for an OE and overseas experience, that is, and then don't come back. And potentially don't come back unless they're raising their family 10 to 15 years later. So we do have some quite interesting demographic challenges there. Flexibility as opposed to remote work is what has challenged us really, really hard. And it hasn't been a COVID thing. It's been a workforce demand where there is a candidate market rather than an employer market. And the and unfortunately, one of the trends that we didn't down here take 12 months to follow was get back to the office right now. And so that, from a change management perspective after COVID, has been particularly challenging for our workforces to be, and our leaders to be grappling with. But I think, Dustin raised a really good point in his introduction. What we never, ever really came to grips with was the very loud voice of the sort of white collar support workforce in this space, and never attached that flexibility to our manufacturing lines or call centers, for example, etc. So I think that we've got a bit of a pendulum equalization to go yet, where when we talk about flexibility, we're talking about that with regards to rostering and a whole heap of other sort of look and feel with regards to how employees can balance their work and life.
Where shall we go from here? Dustin, I see you unmuted, and then Stephanie.
Yeah, I'll jump on and respond to what Alex said. Flexibility is a continuing and evolving trend that I'm seeing. My experience is pretty much just in the U.S. And 2 or 3 years ago, we were talking about flexibility, meaning can I work remote? Today, flexibility is starting to mean alternative work arrangements. We're hearing about unretirement, people coming back from retirement to learn a new skill and get into the workforce. We're seeing people wanting to work multiple jobs at their own arrangement, and other sorts of alternative arrangements. And while I think in the U.S. it is shifting more towards a employer market, the supply is ahead right now. I guess the workforce that we have to draw from is demanding flexibility, and I think employers will be very well served to get with that and figure out what alternative work arrangements work for their business model and adapt to that.
For me, I think when I think about the changing expectations, collectively, we had a shift in our relationship with work when it came to our experiences through the COVID-19 pandemic. And that is a wide range of things, from flexibility to, I think, mental health, well-being, that we are still kind of figuring out in terms of what those expectations look like long term. And I think that's coupled with new generations joining the workforce, like Gen Z, that are also very focused on kind of how does work fit into life holistically versus kind of this idea of work-life balance. It's work needs to plug into my life versus the other way around. And also that kind of more elegant understanding of mental health, well-being than most of us bring into the workplace at a very early age. So those for me are the things that I see come up quite frequently, and I also think they'll be very impactful as we look at how the workplace changes.
Shari, I see you unmuted, and please just jump in after each other.
Will do. I think everyone made really great points, and seeing a lot of that borne out in research around flexibility, an expansive focus on wellness, different ways of working. I think that there is also a shift in terms of in many, and there's a little bit of a push and pull around this, especially here in the US, but employees thinking about wanting an organization to work in an organization that aligns with their values and listens to them. And then there is also a lot of interest in career mobility as well. You've got people wanting to you're seeing people move a lot more frequently, and the ways in which organizations that want to retain employees can do so often rely on finding ways to develop them, train them up for new roles, deploy them into new projects and opportunities so that they feel like they are continuously making progress. And that is, I know we're going to be talking about agility. That is one area of uh, agility that employees want, and that some organizations are more or less prepared to deliver at this point. So, a couple of the things that I suspect we'll come back to.
I was just thinking that you naturally set the ball up for Wayne. I think Wayne is on mute. Wayne, we can't hear you. You're on mute. If you want to jump back in. So technology is giving Wayne a bit of a hard time. In the meantime, I was wondering, Shari, I'm sure the moment you said what's on the employees' minds, everybody was like, oh, what's on their minds indeed. So do you mind just taking us through some of the highlights of that research?
Yeah, well, actually, we're at about the season where that's about to come out. So I think, Alex and Stephanie and Dustin actually all brought up some of the areas. So we see what is likely to keep employees inside an organization, and right below compensation, you see things like culture, like flexibility, like opportunities for career advancement. We've talked about a shift from, as a Gen Xer, the way in which we came into the workforce was, work hard and you'll live well later. And subsequent generations are not liking that equation. So there's definitely a changing equation around, I need to live well now. I can't work hard for some kind of amorphous promise that I'm going to benefit later. So organizations want to see that as well. And then they really want a partner. We are living in a world that is volatile, that feels complex. And so, in thinking about everything from, how do I take care of my mental health, to how do I pay the bills, to, how do I, not enroll in some kind of bland benefits plan that was designed for everyone. How do I find what I need, even in the in the benefits that I enroll in, so that I can take care of myself, I can take care of my family, I can take care of my pets. So there is a lot more of an expectation around a kind of partnership between the employer and the employee than maybe those of us who came into the workforce earlier were ever set to expect, certainly in our early careers at the very least.
Thank you, Shari, and welcome back, Wayne. We've been expecting you with lots of curiosity, mostly around what is agility truly, and how can organizations harness it in the most meaningful way. There's a standing joke, which is not so funny, really. In at my work, I oftentimes ask people now, do we want to be agile or do agile? These are two very different conversations. And I see Wayne is creating even more suspense around the topic. So maybe we can start with, what agility have you witnessed within your organizations, and what's the flavor of agility that you've been witnessing? And then Wayne will give us the condensed masterclass on agility. So let's take it from here. who wants to give it a first go?
I was going to jump in. And so one of the conversations that I've been having in consulting in the last sort of 6 months has been that the companies that are on really clear, defined and quick feedback loops, however that works in their workforce, are the ones that are really winning. So there's the products such as Joyous, those leaders who are, so from everyone from leaders who are out on the shop floor doing stand-ups, for example, or very regularly meeting with people and, sort of step meetings. I don't know. So that's when a manager will meet 2 levels down or 3 levels down, making sure that there is really clear and quick feedback loops. That is forming the basis for getting that information to decision makers much more quickly. And so, and then informed by fantastic surveys like what Shari is talking about, and making sure that information, whether it be reasonably and legitimately collected through a survey type of forum or through forums in the workplace, making sure all that data has a place to be collected, that it's analysed, that it's fed back, and that something is done about it, and particularly in that feedback loop. That's what I'm seeing is getting that differentiator in an employer and making sure that the responsiveness with regards to what an employee or employee groups are asking for.
Sadly, I see that Wayne is still more fragile than agile. Let's hope that it will get better soon. And Stephanie, how have you been experiencing agility in organizations? I'm particularly interested to hear your view with your area of passion.
Absolutely. So, I think for me, one thing that we consistently do when it comes to employee expectations is make assumptions or throw this kind of broad brush around, hey, Gen Z cares about work-life balance, or Gen Z doesn't want to work hard, or Gen Z cares about mental health, for example. And then I think, hey, when was the last time someone talked to one of their Gen Z employees to actually hear from them what they want and what their expectations are? So I think there is a certain aspect of leveraging surveys, information, some of the amazing work, for example, Mercer does that Shari mentioned, can be really powerful. But I think it's coupling that information to build questions to actually ask your workforce about. And I know that can sound, like a lot of work. It's like, oh my gosh, do I have to do another survey? Sometimes it's simple as just having conversations with your team members and building that out. So for me, sometimes I think we talk about agility, we talk about being agile, and it can seem really hard for smaller HR teams, less well-funded HR teams, but it can be as simple as asking questions and really listening and then making adjustments from there. So that's really what I tend to focus on and I stick with, because I think we miss a lot when we talk about, I mean, for example, Gen Z mental health, we talk about it all the time. And I was like, wait, when was the last time I actually heard someone talk about their mental health in the workplace and they're actually a member of Gen Z? So I think that lived experience, that own voice, is really important when we think about true agility.
Dustin, you read my mind. I was gonna ask you, how does agility look like through the business-centric lens?
Well, I think Alex and Stephanie both touched pretty clearly on feedback, and that is when you think about just true agile project management, feedback is one of the most critical or essential pieces of the agile methodology. So myself, I'm a fan of the fail fast approach. So get your stakeholders and your data together, make a decision and try it. And don't be afraid if it doesn't work out, or if there needs a course correction, to get up in front of your workforce and say, this didn't work, so we're trying something else, or we're tweaking it differently based on your feedback. So in my experience, both with product rollouts and marketing approaches, and in workforce initiatives, the fail fast and course correcting approach is a great way to stay on your toes and stay honest as an organization, and to use the feedback that you get.
Wayne, how are you? How's the internet? Is the internet an ally now?
I guess I say 3 strikes and you're out. So I've had 2 strikes. I apologize to everybody. It's never happened to me before. Maybe the spirits didn't want me to say anything, but and I apologize. But when I think about agile, to me it relates to how we deal with perfectionism. In HR, we always wanted to get things right the first time, and do the same thing for everybody, be consistent. And in this world where change is constant, and we need it, we don't have a linear approach to things anymore. We need to be much more agile. We don't really look at perfection. We have to try things and see how they work. Most things won't work. Some things will. And that's how we learn. We learn, as Justin was saying, we learn through our failures. We learn fast. It's a go slow, learn fast, continue approach. And I think that's different for HR. A lot of people grew up in HR with the focus on, you got to get it right the first time and be perfect. In reality, that's never possible, right? And so by involving the customer, by creating a continuous learning environment, we're creating a safe place for people to have honest conversations, for looking at things as experiments, for looking at planning as guidelines, in terms of the directions to focus. I think those are the key elements of an agile. And again, my apologies for the disruptions there.
You are a real life example of agility, just coming back and listening to what you just shared in this round of answers. You reminded me of 2 things, seemingly unrelated, yet having so much in common. One is a wonderful quote from Brené Brown saying that I'm a recovering perfectionist and an inspiring good enougghist. And there might be a strong dose of agility in that quote somewhere. And the other one, there's a wonderful piece of research, and if my memory is serving me right, it comes out of the D School with Stanford University, and it's around innovation, especially what's the relationship with failure and mistakes in the most innovative companies. And the research speaks about the most innovative companies having a KPI that stands for a minimum threshold for failure. And one of the most innovative ones, they have that threshold as high as 60%. And they say that unless they fail less than 60%, they are not bold enough, they're not curious enough, they're not courageous enough. And whenever I work with teams, especially middle management and lower senior executive teams, I ask them, can you just take 2 seconds, close your eyes, and imagine a conversation around putting in place a minimum threshold for failure with your senior stakeholders. Now, did you smile or did you sigh? And how do you feel about that? But I would be very, very curious to hear, with everything that you just shared, and also mindful of the fact that we are approaching the middle of our conversation. When it comes to talking about workforce demands and employee expectations, what are some of the most difficult challenges you have in your conversations? Who are your most, let's say, difficult stakeholders that need extra seasoning and maybe need to be jolted out of some set mental patterns when it comes to this? And if you can make it, actionable for our audience, that would be absolutely wonderful. So how do you recognize the hurdles, and how do you jump over them, under them, around them, What do you feel like sharing?
Well, I guess I'll start since I have an active internet connection, at least at this point. To me, it's always about the manager in the middle, the man and or woman in the middle of an organization. That's really where the rubber meets the road in terms of change. It's really a change mindset. You have a lot of managers who've been very successful doing things the way they've always done it. They don't buy into this new stuff. Why should I change? I've been successful. And that's a challenge until those people retire. It's something we have to deal with. And so it's really about presenting the change in a way that benefits everybody or benefits them specifically, right? People only change for two reasons: seeking gratification or avoiding pain. And in this case, you'll have people who want to try new things, and you have people who are scared to death, but they don't want to fall behind. And so really, to me, like most everything, it's really about the people and their attitudes and behaviors and change. And so change in behavior is a challenge. You have a different generation coming in, perhaps might be easier. I think they're more facile with technology and more willing to question things. But it's those people in the middle of an organization who are line managers who really have a lot of power and influence. And most change programs typically are top down, when in fact change happens bottom up. And so it's really about, can you position the change in a way that's beneficial? Can you hold people accountable for that? And that's really management practices, performance management. It's not rocket science. It's typical things that we have to do in HR to kind of motivate that behavior.
Stephanie.
Oh, that was very good, Wayne. I'm glad your internet is working. One thing for me, and this is like a simple one, and I say it a lot, is I think sometimes we make things seem really hard. And I think we make them seem like things that are another thing for managers to do. And I think specifically, the example I think of most frequently is mental health at work. You talk about mental health at work, there's a lot of folks who think, oh, great, I'm a manager. And now, as another thing I have to add on to my job, it is being a therapist, being a counselor, supporting someone's mental health. I don't have the tools, education to do that. And the truth is, we actually don't want managers to become therapists or counselors because they aren't qualified to do that in most cases. And that's not actually what most folks are looking for. So I think sometimes we make things too complicated, and it's the simplicity of checking in with your teams, getting to know them, offering them support, offering flexibility, saying, hey, how are you doing today? Hey, you seem a little off. What's going on? And then connecting them into resources is a lot of what we're talking about. And we're also talking, when we talk about mental health or trauma-informed workplaces, we're talking about the systems, the processes that bolster mental health and well-being versus creating this expectation that folks have to do this additional thing. So I'm really focused on that kind of manager role, because I think a lot's been put on them. Their roles have gotten incredibly hard over the last few years. How can we make things more simple for them and then also bolster their ability to support their workforce?
Great thought, Stephanie. It kind of aligns with what I'm thinking. When I think about the people that are the hardest to get on board with a change or with a direction the organization is going, there's two things that come to mind. And the first is alignment, and the second is empathy. You're going to get people on board with your motives and your initiatives if they see that it's aligned with what their needs are and with what they want to get out of it. But you can't know what their needs are if you don't take an empathetic approach to it. So I think that's one of the top skills that HR professionals and like Wayne said, our frontline managers can have, is being able to tactically empathize with people and understand their needs in order to help them get on board with whatever the initiative or change that's needed is.
I'm going to be a little provocative. I mean, yes to everything that you all said. I do believe that middle managers have the hardest job with agility because their jobs haven't changed. They have to deliver everything that they have delivered, and now they have a boatload of additional expectations, as well as not necessarily the resources that they need to make that boat sail. But I'm actually going to I'm going to say that sometimes within the HR function, we have challenges. We build programs that are very complex. We manage to an annual calendar of, you have your performance feedback in, November, and you get your comp increase in December. And then, it's a whole year until maybe either of those things happen again. There are very, carefully cultivated learning programs and promotion rules and so forth. And while I think it's important to have the HR infrastructure, and it will continue to be so, and not go guardrail to guardrail and say, okay, we're just going to be like the Wild West, anything now goes in HR. I think HR needs to be challenged to think about, how can I be agile as a head of learning, as a head of talent, as somebody focused on rewards, who is maybe thinking about, how do we get people with certain skills into the workplace, and they're still scarce in the marketplace. All of those kinds of things demand a kind of agility that HR in many organizations is not prepared to deliver, and maybe HR hasn't really been unshackled to deliver. So I don't want to make it a lack of interest or a lack of skill. I think sometimes, talk about a part of the organization that is continuously asked to do more, without necessarily having the additional resources. But I think that's a challenge that we need to internalize and face within the HR function.
Amen.
I saw you looking for the unmute, so I paused a little bit before asking Alex, like, how would you bring home this slice of our conversation?
Look, I think we've been, and Wayne and I particularly, and I think Manola and you as well, have been on panels where. So thank you for throwing down that gauntlet, Sherry. HR does need to change, and I think insofar as the change with regards to where you are. So I think leadership is all about circumstance as well. So it's making sure that there is this sort of framework as such that organised need for financial control, for example, and a number of different other parts of the ecosystem and in terms of business operations, but making sure that there is that curiosity and looking at how an organisation responds in a relationship with their employees, because that's what it is. Everybody has a relationship at work in some way. One of the points that I was going to sort of build on was this notion of hierarchy, and making sure that we are empowering our people, but also empowering our leaders to understand the benefits of a teamship or a shared accountability and delivery. It doesn't have to all land at the feet of a middle manager or a senior manager in that respect. Psychological safety quite often comes from the people you work with, and making sure that there is appropriate behaviours in place and standards of how that team, as an example, work and function really well to deliver. And some of that performance accountability, you are less likely going to let down the person that sits beside you, rather than you are thinking that you can hide from someone who has 20 people to look after. And that's the part, and that person is also the person that you can make sure that you're learning from, and having that more, I suppose, accountable relationship with. In terms of delivery. So that was the build that I was going to, but yes, HR's got to be at the front of all of this in terms of anything the workplace is starting to think about. It's, a bit like the parent-child, don't do as I do as I say, does not fly. So yeah, we do really have to look at ourselves as well.
Thank you all. And I need to make a small confession. I was sitting here, and at the back of my mind, there was a small, curious, quite loud question, actually, like, how long before someone will tell us, okay, AI, data and AI, let's not let a conversation unfold without talking about AI. And today we had 36 minutes of bandwidth before we were pulled into the AI bit. But we did promise to touch on data and AI. So let's follow the energy of the conversation and the energy in the audience. How does data and AI play into this conversation? And Dustin, I will ask you to lead us into this bit. And then Shari, I saw you unmuted there for a few seconds. So we go Dustin, Shari, and we take it from there.
Sure. So I guess the first thing that comes to mind, I can't remember who on the panel said it at the beginning, but the need for talent development and upskilling and reskilling. When you say AI, that's the first thing that comes to mind. Is we have this technological wave coming our way, and our organizations need to be prepared to take advantage of it and have the talent in place. And at the same time, our workforce needs to be prepared for that, and they are clamoring for greater outcomes with the way that we develop them. So not so much input there on the data part, but in terms of AI, I think the name of the game right now is talent development and making sure that we're being proactive about preparing our organizations and our workforce to take advantage of it.
Shari, you mentioned sitting on a mountain of data. So please come down from that mountain and shine.
Well, I often say that HR is sitting on a mountain of data that they're not necessarily using. And, unless an organization is large enough, perhaps to have somebody whose responsibility is around making heads or tails of all of the data and making it insightful and actionable. Often that data is either not being absorbed by the organization, or it's being absorbed in a kind of discontinuous way. So, whose responsibility is it to, read exit survey data? Well, the answer is it depends. It could be the HR business partner. It could be somebody in talent acquisition or talent management. It could be nobody. Whose responsibility is it, to, everything that we write on Slack and Teams in public spaces in our organizations is data. Whose responsibility is it to understand that? So there's all this, and that's just the data that is out there, low-hanging fruit that organizations aren't necessarily mining and cleaning and using for insights and all the like. Then there's okay, what can we learn from everything that we already have and know about people? How does the length of people's commute influence their intent to stay? What happens when a manager leaves? Does that impact somebody's productivity, and for how long? So kind of going up the chain to predictive analytics, what can we predict? What can we discern from data, and kind of tying together demographics and performance data and engagement data and all of the other types of data that are out there? What are our organizational health metrics, and what are our strategic metrics in terms of what we're trying to achieve as an organization and as an HR function? And so having somebody to put that picture together is important. And I believe that data is also a really strong backbone on which to then think about AI, because AI, it can hallucinate. As organizations are building their private instances, AI is going to pull from the data that they have. So that data has to be solid. It has to be reliable. And I would definitely plus one to what Dustin said around organizations encouraging their teams to learn AI and experiment. And I think between learning and performance goal setting, HR actually has can be a big and important lever in encouraging the use of AI. And then data can also inform the use cases in which AI makes sense, in which it can be applied in a do no harm fashion, and where AI needs to end, and the humans need to pick up the process from there.
I think with AI and data, to me, the biggest impact is employee engagement. We now have the capability to design things for one person at a time. Everybody in this call has different needs. Everybody in this call unlearns things, relearns things at different speeds, different learning styles, different experiences. And so instead of designing one thing that everybody has to take, we can customize that. We customize it in terms of the content, how it's delivered, how it's reinforced. And so that's really the beauty of I think, AI with the right data is customizing that experience so that people get the best experience possible. The challenge is, getting the right data and make sure it's current and things like that. But to me, that's where I see the biggest impact. Certainly AI can improve processes, make things faster, but it's a mindset HR has to change. We focused on, one size fits all. Can we now start focusing on the individual and providing content, knowledge, resources they need when they need it? And I think with the tools coming out with AI, I think that's a bright future. So I'm excited about that.
I love what you said, Wayne. I love the aspect of individualization with AI. I think that's so important. I also think for, HR professionals and AI, to me, kind of the lowest hanging fruit is what things can you take off your plate that can be automated? In every role, even at the executive level in HR, there are really tactical things that had to happen. And I think there's this awesome opportunity, even in these kind of beginning stages of AI, to take these things off our plate, automate them, and then create that space to dive deeper into the data, build out resources that are more customized, more individualized, get more strategic, have the right conversations. So, especially for folks who are like, I don't know how I would possibly start to integrate AI, I think, what are those things that are, just the things you have to get done that take a lot of time as an HR professional? And can you use AI to automate those, or at least help make those more efficient? I think that that's such a great place to start, because then it frees up some more of your capacity and your team's capacity.
Any thoughts, any additions from the future, Alex?
Oh, look, I think really, really well covered. I mean, AI for HR, which I'll certainly be picking up a convo with Wayne after this, is going to revolutionise the way that we do business with regards to how we present an experience to the workforce as well as to our leaders. And I think that when we look at what are people demanding and agility, our frameworks, as we have been discussing in HR, can be really sort of expedited and cleaned up as such from an experiential point of view. Because I don't think we look at our lens, our own practices with the lens that we would as a customer. So when we talk about customer experience or user experience, I don't think HR does enough of that gazing internally about how our experiences impact the engagement or not of somebody. And if you think the really simplistic one of all the data, which Shari probably can put forward quite quickly on the disengagement of a poor onboarding. What was said in the interview is not what turns up when you turn up to work for them. So those types of experiences are the ways that we can be really responsible for, and therefore really celebrate about how we are doing things quicker, easier, faster, for the types of tasks that should just clock through the framework, like performance, but how do we make it easier so it isn't interactive and we go back to best principles in the function that we stand in front of.
Now we are 10 minutes away from wrapping our conversation up, and I will anticipate the questions that we normally get over the last few minutes, whether this is being recorded, and the answer is yes. And you can always go back and re-listen, rewatch, or recommend our conversation to your colleagues and friends, or anyone you think this would be meaningful for. You can it's absolutely the same link on LinkedIn. As soon as the live is done, just give it a couple of minutes, and then you can use the same location. I got very curious over something as I was listening to you over these past 50 minutes. If we look at understanding and adapting to workforce demands, can you think of one skill that is particularly helpful and meaningful for people in our audience to develop in order to be able to tackle the issues within this particular dimension? And there are extra points available for skills that are not necessarily within the immediate circle of usual suspects. So if you can think of something that's really expanding our thinking about skills, that would be absolutely wonderful. And I will leave the e-mic roaming around and jump in as inspiration strikes.
Well, I would think that learning how to listen better, listen and understand to what employees are saying. Now, again, as I mentioned, we used to be HR for HR, and that's not going to work anymore. And so how can we listen to employees? How can we know what they're thinking, what their desires are? The nice thing about Agile is that you involve your customer in everything constantly. So instead of having a project that runs for 6 months and at the end people don't want it, you have a project that people on a daily basis buy into, and you get feedback and things like that. And so there's, some companies focus on sentiment analysis. Some do pulse surveys. The tools are there to listen. The question is, are we going to do that? Do we find that important enough? And my answer is yes. I mean, if you're not providing value to employees, then what's the purpose of HR, right? And so, again, with analytics, with generative AI, you can really tap into what the workforce is thinking and planning. And so that allows you to be proactive and create an environment where people are engaged and productive. So listening and then reacting would be my skill for the future.
Oh, sorry, Stephanie, did you?
Go ahead, Alex.
Alex and Stephanie.
I was going to say the rapid fire feedback, making sure that we do have ways to collate feedback, do something with it, and respond, and insofar as then follow up. So this concept that has been really interesting, and I think it's HR getting better at not having a full event or some round engagement surveys, for an example, but looking at crowdsourcing and really innovative ways of making sure that there are really quick ways of getting that feedback to the business.
Minola, I took your call for something off the beaten path seriously here. So I'm gonna talk about something that I'm really passionate, and I think it's important, and maybe something not talked about is trauma informed skill sets. So we think about trauma informed skill sets. Probably everyone just heard trauma and just like clamped up a little bit. That's pretty true. But really, what trauma informed skill sets, leadership, workplaces are about are understanding and having awareness around the prevalence of trauma, actively avoiding re-traumatizing survivors, and avoiding harm. And trauma-informed practices allow us to operate from a lens of doing that through all our employee processes. It also helps us address this concept of mental health and employee well-being, with it being part of how we do business versus something else to check the box. So for me, I mean, obviously that's something that I spend a lot of time doing and supporting. But I really think as we're growing and progressing, as we're getting to this very individualized, customized place in our workplace and our world, I think the skill set can be an incredible way to help tackle that in something that doesn't feel so overwhelming for leaders and practitioners.
I'm also going to go a little off the beaten path, and I'm going to encourage, adopting the skills around the scientific method. So having a hypothesis, being able to test it. These are, not just things that need to happen in the world of the hard sciences. They need to, for those of us who are tasked, or maybe not even tasked with anticipating employee expectations and workforce demands. Sometimes you might hear something in a meeting, and you might say, oh, I wonder if that is a more common sentiment. And then you have to think about, okay, how am I going to test that? I would definitely add a dose of agility, because we don't have years to develop the perfect science experiment that we want to admire. And so, I think those two, and then, the other one I would say is, making connections, making mental connections between disparate pieces of data, because rarely are those all the data points neatly packaged up for someone to just discover and act on. So everything from you see something here to you hear something there to you have a spreadsheet in front of you, connecting all those points is really important.
So I'm going to give two answers. One is kind of a reaction to what Wayne said, and the other one because I want that extra credit too. So I think, unfortunately, repeating what I said earlier, I think empathy is really key to helping organizations be more agile and helping people change, understanding what their needs and what their drivers are, and being able to align those with yours. But at the risk of sounding way out of left field, I think the extra credit answer I'm going to go for is knowing financials. As much as we all have different needs that are not monetary, but a lot of what we do in our organizations and a lot of what we do as individuals is driven by the quantifiable need for income and to generate value. And so I think the better that we can understand the lifeblood of our businesses or whatever our organizations are, the better we can relate those to people and the workforce demands and help everyone succeed.
Well, to say that I absolutely love this conversation would be such an understatement. And as a means of thank you, I would just drop two skills that I would love the audience to at least consider. One of them comes in the form of what I say to people that I work with almost on a daily basis: be curious, not furious. So just holding back from judgment or immediate reaction to something that we learn either through data or a conversation, and just stay in that space of curiosity for just one more second. So be curious, not furious. And the other one, I was rechecking the comments, and we have people from literally all over the world. So I would also love to leave cultural competence with us. We look at the workforce through the lens of generations, functions, roles, you name it, but not as intentional through the lens of the background of their cultures. And that can yield such amazing nuances in everything that we do in our workplaces. Now, I would really love to have a last wrap up round. This will be the punchline style wrap up answers. Just leave something really juicy, really crisp with our audience, and we will go counterclockwise. That means that Wayne will go first and we will take it from there. So, Wayne, famous last words for today.
Make sure you have a good internet connection when you dial into a webcast. Aside from that, what I would focus on is having a continuous improvement, adaptation mindset. I think, continuously improving, learning to experiment, having hypotheses about the future. It's a new way of working, but I think if we can adopt that, I think we're better off. And thank you. Again, I apologize for my disruptions.
It was lovely having you here today. Thank you. Shadi.
Talk to your colleagues and work with them. Siloed equals suboptimal in everything that we've talked about.
Thank you. Alex.
From me, it's just making sure you're mastering the feedback loops.
Wonderful. Stephanie.
For me, it's get curious and don't be afraid to try some of this, even if it's small bites of AI, working through data, of exploring more about employee expectations. There's a lot on HR professionals' plates. We can take on things if we take them on in smaller bites, and build from there.
Thank you. Dustin.
I'll say 2 punchlines that have to do with agility are tactical empathy and fail fast.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. You on the screen for your energy and generosity of sharing. Everybody in the audience for the curiosity and the support. Is such a great thing to see, the engagement in the chat. Jessa, thank you for taking care of us. And I hope I will get to welcome as many of you as possible tomorrow. I will be hosting tomorrow's conversation. And in the meantime, take care and stay agile, not fragile. See you tomorrow.